the Thai version, very high reliabilities, and it differentiates successful from less successful people. Go the other way, Tom. Oh, the background. Yes, we began by really looking at some studies. And Spencer & Spencer have written a book, Competence at Work. They have a competency dictionary of 24 competencies. We've linked it to this. We actually went to Daniel Goleman, working with emotional intelligence in his book on primal leadership. We built a scale called emotional self-awareness, which really measures the constructs, and that's in the inventory. And ONET has defined a set of dimensions that are important for sex and jobs. That is to find the scales. It's provided on the internet, and these are examples of how it's presented on the internet, and people taking the questionnaire say, which language do I want to complete it in? We mentioned the big 5 factors. And there's been a revolution in measuring work styles and personality of people over the last 20 years. Research going back 20 years ago started assessing people from around the world in terms of their self-descriptions. Using a statistical procedure called factor analysis, they've tried to identify relatively independent dimensions for describing people, humankind. And they found 5 independent dimensions. And they are identified here on the left. And what we have found is that if we're trying to measure people, we should get measures of all 5 of these characteristics. And what I mentioned earlier is that tools before 20 years ago typically only measured a few of these characteristics. A very common tool up till 20 years ago was the California Psychological Inventory. It measured 2 of these dimensions, but overlooked 3 of the others. They're called extroversion and being extroverted or introverted. Now, frequently in extroversion, in North America, we think about it as being sociable, talking to people, finding it very easy to talk to strangers. But it's more than that. It is leadership, being assertive, taking charge in groups, being very persuasive, negotiating with people, and having a lot of energy, liking to juggle lots of balls at once, having a very fast-paced life. This is all bundled under a set of behaviors called extroversion. Agreeableness relates a lot to teamwork and cooperation, helping people, and being concerned about helping the less fortunate people in society, being very compassionate, tactful with people, and helpful. Openness to experience is really more a thinking dimension. People in a lot of research and development, engineering kinds of jobs tend to be very high on this. Also, very interestingly, a lot of people in human resources tend to be high on openness to experience because we're doing a lot of solving problems with people. And it relates to being imaginative, curious, adaptable, analytical, and self-reliant. And there's some other definitions of it. Conscientiousness is another dimension. This relates to, as I mentioned, the Olympic athletes, setting goals, working hard to achieve goals, being reliable, persistent, being careful, attending to details, volunteering for assignments, and finally, emotional stability. This relates to being even-tempered. Do people get angry very easily and show their anger, or do they hold it back and get along with others? Or stress tolerance. There are some people that if there's much work-related stress, they show it. I think that sometimes when I watch a Woody Allen movie, Woody Allen is not very stress tolerant. He gets all excited and nervous and anxious and so on. The scores tend to be shown in clusters. And as you see on the right side, these are some definitions in blue: extroversion, agreeableness, openness to experience. There are scores on the various scales. And the scores are in terms of percentile standing. The higher the score, there's a brief description on the left that is descriptive of high scores. And on the left is brief descriptions of low scores.